With Pokemon Home finally coming out for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, my team, the Miami Palafins, have decided to take part in a brand new draft league to commemorate the start of a brand new generation of Pokemon allowed in for Pokemon Draft League content. So my team, the Miami Palafins, have decided to take part in another brand new draft league in the PBA, the Paldea Battle Academy. This league has some couple of twists to go along with it. There is a total of 48 coaches taking part in this draft league, which have been split up into 4 separate divisions of 12 Pokemon. Each coach is given 115 points to draft between 10 to 12 Pokemon, and now on top of that, they are given a Terra budget of 25 points, with the points coming out from the total value of the Pokemon, and on top of that is also free Terra. So yeah, it's going to get incredibly bonkers with the amount of possibilities you can get with some of these Terra options for sure. However, there are also some other things to take into account, which I will go over in just a second. But the one thing to know about this team is, first and foremost, I did end up getting the number 1 pick in my division, the Slitherwing division, meaning I had first crack at every Pokemon available on the draft board. However, there is a caveat to this. Every division has at least 5 Pokemon that are forbidden from being drafted in that division. And those 5 Pokemon in my case were Great Tusk, Palafin, Greninja, Urshifu Rapid Strike, and the one Pokemon I was looking forward to drafting the most in this league, Iron Valiant. So with that out of the way, and my hopes dashed of actually using Iron Valiant in a draft league format, I had to change up my approach. But this wasn't the end of the world for me because, like I said, I had the number 1 pick in the draft, so I had first pickings at whatever was available on the draft board. And the best way to go about this draft is to basically just take the best Pokemon available to kick off this brand new league of mine that I'm taking part in. So with that, the number 1 pick in the draft had to be none other than Chien-Pao. Why is this Pokemon still allowed in draft league format? Who knows? But hey, I'm not going to pass up the opportunity to use a Pokemon like this. An incredible wall breaker with a fantastic offensive typing in Ice and Dark, a blistering base 135 speed, a respectable 100 base 120 attack, and probably one of the more broken abilities ever created by Pokemon in Sword of Ruin, decreasing the defense of any opposing Pokemon by 25%, meaning the bulkiest of walls can fall in the face of Chien-Pao. On top of that, it does get access to Sword Stance to boost its attack stat even higher, Sacred Sword in case I have to go up against any Curse or Iron Defense users, and even having access to moves like Taunt in case I have the ability to prevent slower Pokemon or walls from healing up or whatever. Regardless of all that, a fantastic offensive typing, a respectable defensive typing. Granted, Chien-Pao is not really the type of Pokemon that likes to come in and take hits, but the possibility is there, especially considering his Pokemon also gets access to Recover. But who knows if that will actually come up if I actually use this that move in particular. But regardless though, a fantastic way to start off my team for the Miami Palafins for sure. Since I did have to wait a while since there was 11 other coaches, I had 22 other picks to have to worry about between my pick of Chien-Pao and my next selection, which is, since I'm the first pick, I had the wheel. So the first Pokemon I ended up grabbing on the wheel was Garchomp. I don't know how that fell to me at the back end of round number 2, but hey, I'm not one to complain. Garchomp is a fantastic Pokemon. A Dragon Ground typing and access to Sword Stance. It gives me a Stealth Rocker, a Spiker, Dragon, and Ground typing. And of course, Rough Skin in conjunction with Rocky Helmet can chip down even the mightiest of Pokemon. I also forgot to mention that Chien-Pao cannot Terrasilize. There are other Pokemon available in this draft that also cannot Terrasilize, which I will get into. But for the most part, Chien-Pao is not a Terra Captain because it is prevented from Terrasilizing in the first place. On Garchomp's behalf, it can Terrasilize. I will indicate when my Terra Captains will pop up. But Garchomp in and of itself, while it can use Terra, it's not really going to be benefiting the most, especially if maybe it kept scale shot, I would consider have considered Garchomp as a Terror Captain. But that aside though, it's still a fantastic Pokemon. It gives me a respectable base stat of 102 speed. Like I said, it gives me Stealth Rock, it gives me a Spiker, it gives me a Electric Immunity if needed, and on top of that, it's just a very, very versatile Pokemon, being able to run offensive sets with SD, with Stealth Rock, can also be a valid Choice Scarf user if need be, and the possibilities are pretty much endless in the face of a Pokemon like Garchomp, especially considering its typing, its versatility, and well-rounded stats to boot. And it pairs up very, very well with Chien-Pao, especially considering that Chien-Pao does benefit a lot from having the entry hazard support, chipping down the opponent's Pokemon, and making it easier for Chien-Pao to do what Chien-Pao does best. The next Pokemon I ended up grabbing on the wheel was Cinderace. Cinderace, absolutely love this Pokemon. It gives my team a needed fire type. It also gives my team a needed speed tier early on between Chien-Pao and Garchomp at base 119 speed. On top of that, I also do get access to Libero. While Libero has been nerfed this generation, since you can only switch typings based on the first move you click as opposed to every move you click, Cinderace is still a fantastic Pokemon, being able to function as either a disruptor with moves like Will-O-Wisp. It does get access to Sword Stance this generation, and it still gets access to coverage moves like High Jump Kick, Gunk Shot, U-Turn for Momentum, and its signature move Court Change does allow me to change any hazards that ends up on my side of the field and swap it over to my opponent. Other than that though, it's still a fantastic Pokemon and can be a very solid disruptor as well, with access to moves like Taunt, Super Fang to whittle down the bulkier Pokemon that Chien-Pao can struggle with, and it also gives me a means of checking Steel type Pokemon like Corviknight that Garchomp can struggle with at times, and also it benefits Chien-Pao in that sense as well. Regardless, the next thing I needed on my team for sure, since I do have 3 very solid Pokemon to kick off my draft, they're all, for the most part, physical attackers, so I knew adding special attackers to my team was definitely needed at this point in time. So when it came back to me around number 4, I ended up snagging up Glimmora. Glimmora is a fantastic Pokemon, providing my team with a rock and poison type, and more importantly, a grounded poison type, so I never have to worry about toxic spikes. On top of that, a needed special attacker who base 130 speed, a cool ability in Toxic Debris, setting a layer of toxic spikes on my opponent's side of the field if a move makes contact with Glimmora. I can also use Corrosion to poison opposing poison and steel type Pokemon, and of course Glimmora does get access to its signature move in Mortal Spin, giving me the ability of additional removal without having to rely so much on Cinderace. On top of that though, very solid Pokemon, a very strong special attacker, a solid hazard remover, giving me the ability to spin on essentially every Pokemon that's not a steel type and or Goldengo, which is essentially both. But for the most part, Glimmora is still a fantastic Pokemon, giving me another potential Stealth Rocker if needed, Toxic Spikes and Toxic Debris. It also can make for a very solid Choice Scarf Pokemon with a respectable base 86 speed if the opportunity does come up for it. But other than that though, really excited to try out Glimmora for the first time this generation. And now for the most obvious, well, probably not the most obvious, but for anyone who knows me knows how much I love using Gardevoir. So yeah, you know I had to snag her up. It's too much. But yeah, I see the hate, and it's sort of like, oh, I wonder what Tone's gonna draft here. Like some if anyone knows me in the Draft League community, there are 3 things that are a formality: death, taxes, and me drafting Gardevoir. It seems like a formality at this point. But regardless, who can say no to Gardevoir? Well, I think of a few people, but not in that sense. I'm getting distracted, but anyway, Gardevoir is still fantastic. While it gives me a Psychic and Fairy type Pokemon first and foremost. It gives me another special attacker. It has multitudes of coverage options aside from its dual stab and Psychic Fairy type. It gets Mystical Fire, it gets Aura Sphere, can access to Will-O-Wisp, can be a Wish Passer if needed, can give me momentum with Teleport if needed. And it's not limited to being a Choice Scarf user. And that's pretty much the main caveat, I guess, with people with why they don't like Gardevoir that much, because they basically see it as only being a Choice Scarf revenge killer and nothing else. I've proved time and time in the past that Gardevoir is more than just a Scarf user. It is a Specs user, it is a Assault Vest user, it is a Trick Room setter. There is a multitude of things that Gardevoir can do that are unexplored by other people, and it kind of irks me when they see it so one-dimensionally, and that's why I keep drafting it, to prove those people that Gardevoir is not just a one-trick pony. It's not a one-trick mon at all. And for the most part, if the opportunity comes to me to keep drafting Gardevoir and proving people wrong and why it's so good, I will keep doing it. And on top of that, an ability like Trace is still a top 5 ability, in my opinion, in the game. Being able to trace Intimidate, being able to trace any weather abilities to get the advantage on opposing weather sweepers. The only downside to this is the fact that you cannot trace the Paradox Pokemon's abilities, like Quark Drive and Persistence you can't trace them because they're so unique. And on top of that, you cannot trace the Treasure. You can trace the Treasure Ruins abilities, but they are unaffected by opposing Ruin abilities, so that's kind of moot too. But those are sort of like not really niche situations, but it's just situations where still Trace is still a very good ability for copying certain stuff from your opponent that you can use against your opponent. And yeah, Gardevoir is a very good Pokemon regardless. And yeah, I just love using this thing. So moving on from that, while my team was shaping up really, really well with my first 5 picks, the one thing I was really lacking so far was a real Terra abuser, so to speak. Champal cannot terrestrialize, and the other 4 Pokemon can, but they don't really like give me the real option I was looking for in terms of a Terra Captain. I would at the very least like a Terra Captain that gave me the ability to at least boost its speed and be sort of a setup sweeper. I didn't really have a setup sweeper at this point on my draft. And that brings me to my round 6 pick, which just so happened to fall into my lap that fits that role to a T. And that Pokemon just so happens to be Hisuian Lilligant. Don't know how I got this round 6, but I'm not complaining. Hisuian Lilligant is the perfect candidate for my team to act as a Terra Captain. Not only does it boast solid base 105 attack and 105 base speed, it has the ability Hustle to boost its physical attacks at the cost of its accuracy being dropped by 80%. So I do have to coincide with the chance of me missing an 80% accurate close combat. On top of that, though, it does make for the perfect Terra Captain since it can break past its checks with Hustle boosted Terra Blast, and on top of that, it gets access to its signature move Victory Dance, boosting attack, defense, and speed by 1 stage. And who's going to pass up that sort of power in the face of Hisuian Lilligant? Being able to boost your own attack and speed as well as defense, and then on top of that, having Hustle on top of that with terrestrialization allowed in free Terra format? Chef's kiss right there. So happy that Hisuian Lilligant fell into my lap and fits the Terra role captain to a T for my draft. The next thing I needed for my team, I needed a ground immunity. All 6 of my Pokemon so far are grounded, and with my ground resist being Hisuian Lilligant, that's not really going to go that far for me in the long run, especially considering that Hisuian Lilligant, while it does can act as a synthesis and can even act as a defogger if I really want to be desperate, it's not going to be the bona fide ground check that I wanted from my team. So I had to remedy that situation, which I did with my very next pick, and that Pokemon just so happened to be Orthworm, grabbing it for 6 points. Orthworm is, in most people's cases, sort of mid, especially considering that Orthworm in this league, its move Shed Tail is banned, so I cannot pass a sub to Hisuian Lilligant, Victory Dance, and go ham. But regardless, Orthworm does fit the role that I needed for my team. It gives me a Steel type, which I did not have. It also grants my team a ground immunity thanks to its ability Earth Eater, acting essentially as a ground type water absorb for the most part. Aside from that, it provides me with another Stealth Rocker and Spiker to go along with Glamora and Garchomp. It gives my team essentially a sort of setup sweeper in the sense that it does get access to Iron Defense and Body Press. And yeah, it's still a very formidable Pokemon. It's a very bulky Pokemon on the physical side, can struggle a bit with some pretty subpar special defense, but aside from that, though, I'm pretty okay with it not being that specially bulky, because I do have some pretty solid, especially defensive Pokemon as well on my team, considering with Gardevoir and Glamora. I'm not too overly concerned about taking opposing Ice-type attacks. So, Orthworm still fits the role of my team, which was needing a Steel type, and more importantly, I have the needed ground immunity that my team was definitely lacking. The next thing my team was lacking was a Water type. And I went through a lot of Pokemon that were still available at this point in time in round 7. I was considering Pokemon like Rotom Wash, which was still available, even Dondozo at some point in time. But I decided instead to settle on another very bulky Water type, and that Pokemon is Vaporeon. Vaporeon is very, very solid as a bulky water, and this is also my second Terra Captain as well, so it can function very, very well defensively if I need to. Granted, if Hisuian Lilligant's role does get a little bit diminished in terms of a sweeping role, I have Vaporeon to terrestrialize as a more defensive option for those strong threats that may hinder my team. And on top of that, like I said, it fits the role of my team that I didn't have, a Water type that gets access to Wish, so I don't have to be Wish support with Gardevoir. Still a very strong special attacker with access to Surf and Ice Beam, and with access to Terrestrialization, I can also use Terra Blast to break through any other checks like opposing bulky Water types. As well as being able to not only Baton Pass, since Baton Pass is allowed, but only in Dry Pass situations, and it also gets access to Calm Mind, so it can be a formidable Calm Mind sweeper if need be. Aside from that, though, Vaporeon is just a fantastic Pokemon from my draft, fulfills the role of bulky water, and checks all the boxes that I need, giving me a water immunity, a Wish Passer, and a strong special attacker in general. The next Pokemon I ended up grabbing with 8 points to spare was Electros. Electros, it's not bad. I will say, it's definitely not bad. It's one of those Pokemon that, as an Electro type, it's one of those things that, it's an Electro type that doesn't really need Terrestrialization, because it's an Electro type with plenty of coverage options. It gets access to Flamethrower, Giga Drain, gives me additional momentum with U-turn or Volt Switch, and on top of that, it gives me slow momentum, which is perfect in conjunction with other momentum Pokemon from my team, considering I have Cinderace, and considering that I have Vaporeon can also slow Baton Pass as well. So having that bulky pivot is essential, and plus I have Wish support to go along with Electros, so it doesn't have to worry about being at low HP at all time. And even more so, I do have the access to heal itself up with access to Giga Drain. It can run Coil with Drain Punch, can Dragon Tail to be a phaser, Discharge to be a paralysis spreader. So yeah, the options are definitely available for Electros, and yeah, really excited to try this thing out. It also gives me another ground immunity with access to Levitate, so it's a Pokemon with essentially no weaknesses, barring like Mold Breaker, Terra Ground, Tinkaton, or something like that. But aside from that though, Electros is a fantastic Pokemon from my team, providing me with a bulky pivot, and it can also function as a Coil Sweeper as well if the opportunity does arise for me to try to use that thing. I'll try to give it a whirl if the opportunity comes up. And then finally, with the last pick of my draft, I ended up snagging up Mischievous. Mischievous provided my team with a Ghost type. I didn't have one, so I have the opportunity to be a potential spin blocker. It gives me another Levitate user, so a third ground immunity to go along with Electros and Vaporeon. Other than that though, Mischievous, despite being only 1 point, can still be a disruptor on offensively and defensively, and is my third and final Terra Captain. The main thing to take into account with Mischievous is the fact that it does get access to Eviolite, so it can be a lot bulkier than intended. It can also terrestrialize in conjunction with being a Fairy type to pull off moves sets like Nasty Plot, Drain, and Kiss. Can be a Calm Mind disruptor as well. Can also spread around stats with Will-O-Wisp and Thunder Wave and Hex to boost the damage to opposing status spreaders like that. So aside from that though, Mischievous's role will probably be a little bit diminished, but like I said, it does fulfill the roles as a Ghost type, a type I did not have, so I have the access to be a Rapid Spin blocker. I do have access to a ground immunities for other ground type Pokemon, and it's a status spreader from my team, which is great support to have situations, as well as getting the access to other support moves like Memento. So with that being said, that is the draft for the Miami Palafins for Season 2 of the Paldea Battle Academy. Let me know what you guys think about the team. I really am excited to try this team out. It has a lot of Pokemon I have not used. Some I obviously have used in the past. But yeah, I feel like this is one of the more balanced teams I ended up drafting for the most part. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how things go with this team. I'm really excited to try it out. Week 1 will be going up next Thursday. I hope you're looking forward to that battle as well as much as I am. And yeah, that's going to be it from me, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And until the next time, Mrs. Tone, signing out for now. Peace out.